Okay, what I'm going to show you today has to do with self-service BI, and Excel, of course, is a primary player in the self-service BI world, and of course a pivot table. I'm going to demonstrate on a perspective of a cube, which is just a small microcosm of the cube that I selected, so it's easier to demonstrate. And I'm going to show you what you don't want to do and what you can do to make it easier for your users. Okay, so in this small example, we're going to start off and pull in this customer count, which is a distinct count of all customers in the AdventureWorks cube. Of course, we're working with SSAS and a multidimensional cube. And I'm going to pull in internet sales. Okay. All right, so here we are with customer count and internet sales for the entire cube, for the entire perspective. Okay, and so that's non-filtered, of course. So now I'm going to pull in a category from the products dimension. And now we see a grand total of 18,484. Then the customer distinct count broken up by accessories, bikes, and clothing. And then, of course, our internet sales amount. Now, what I also want to do is I'm going to pull in on top the year attribute of the date dimension. And I'm going to drag that over to filters. Okay. So as you see, as you watch that 18,484, that's everything. So if I click on 2005, I get 93. 2006, I get 2650. You get the idea. And that year they only sold bikes. 2007 looks like they expanded their sales, and now they sell bikes, accessories, and clothing. Okay. Now, what I want to do is be able to tell them what the average per distinct customer is for any time period. So for this time period, for example, I want to know that accessories, bikes, and clothing, I want to know what the average amount of money that was spent was. And I don't want my users to have to go through some calculations to get here. Because what we could do is we could take that number there, copy it, paste it, right? Bring it down a few. The user then would calculate formula, which would take the sales amount and divide it by the 883, right? So we would say it would look something like C4 divided by B7, right? And then this would come down and you get something that looks like this. So 269 divided by 8,813 is $31, etc. So that's what the users would have to do if you gave them this scenario, or something like that. They'd have to do some work, and we don't want them to have to do any work. So what we want to do is create a couple calculated members that will do this for them, and all they'll have to do is drag it in from the field list, and they're off and running. All right, so what we're going to do is go to calculations, and I'm going to right click and say new calculated member. In this area, I'm going to type in customer count. Customer count, not account. Okay, so there's our frozen customer count, and we're going to create a little MDX here. So what we're going to do to create this is a tuple. Okay, so I'm going to do a little syntax here. A lot of syntax here, actually. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring in the current customer count, that distinct count. Okay, so I come down here, which is my little helper, and I say, okay, so I go locate the customer count, which is right under customer. Oh, I see an error here, so it means I need to reconnect. So once I reconnect and I go back to that customer internet customers, now I see it. So now I can just click there and drag that over here. Okay, and what's that going to do? It's going to do the same thing as it does in my regular measures. So that's not quite what I want. So to understand what I'm about to do requires an understanding of MDX in a very important way, actually. Every single dimension in your cube has an association with every single measure. So, for example, if I look at date and I bring any date attribute from here, like day of name, whatever, day name, and just drag it in here, I have a tuple. And that, what does that represent? What this represents, just by bringing that in like that, says that it is always looking at the current member by default of that date. So if I'm over in the Excel cube and I have day name dragged onto the pivot area, which would show Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, when it looks at the cells, the customer count next to it, really what it's doing is saying, what's the current member of day name? Well, in that case, it's Monday. On the second row, it's Tuesday. On the third row, it's Wednesday. Okay? Now, so that's, by default, it's the current member. Now let's erase that. What is it looking at when it looks at day name now? There's nothing there, right? Well, guess what? Intrinsically, under the covers, it's always looking at the current member of every attribute and every dimension in your cube. You got to remember that. Intrinsically, it is looking at the current member. So if you don't have any current members selected inside your pivot table, then what is it looking at? Well, yeah, I didn't tell you this yet. It looks at the default member of that attribute, dimension attribute. What is that dimension attribute's default member by default? Unless you change it. It's the all member. Okay? So if you don't see it, it's the all member. So this you might have to listen to this a few times. It's not easy to describe. But so if I go down to date here, or let's say day name like we just did, and I look at the members, its default member is called all periods. They changed it when they went to, and whoever created the AdventureWorks cube called it all periods, yet it's really, by default, if you don't even touch it, it's always the word all. Okay? And you see there's our other members. So your all member adds up all these guys. Okay, so if you don't have this attribute on your pivot table, guess what? Your value intrinsically, with nothing showing in your tuple, is going to be the all periods. So just imagine, let's say I have 14 dimensions and each one has 10 attributes. When I write something like this, it will work. But guess what? Every single one of those attributes under the cover is intrinsically saying, give me the current member. And if there is no current member available for it to look at, it's given the all member. All right, and this is where it all, by understanding this concept, MDX gets a lot easier. Okay, that concept is such a huge concept. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, if I put okay, we're looking at the category, right? Look at the category. So if I put category here and put a comma. Okay, and I look back at my spreadsheet over here. Notice its combination with customer count is going to say, what's the customer count of the current member? Well, the current member for category is accessories. So the count is 9943. And then for bikes, it's the current member, right? If we go back to the calculation, since I didn't write anything else here, it's using the current member, right? Okay, let's just play with this for a second, because this is so critical. Now, let's say, so now I'm going to go ahead and push this forward. I'm going to push this out. We're going to build this a little bit slowly here, but it's so important. I need to push it out. This is a very important concept. And there it is, exactly the same, because it's using the current member. It's all about the current member. Now, let's say, I'm going to just use a quick example. Let's say I just want to look at accessories, and I want all these numbers to be, let's say bikes. I want all the numbers to say 5785. I want all these numbers just to say the same thing. Okay? So back to my calculated member. And I'm going to drag in. I'm just going to drag it in because that's a little bit safer than to type it in. Sometimes it's safer, sometimes not. So I'm going to say members, I'm going to say all products, and I'm going to say bring in bikes, right? And bikes key. This is a key. You could also say, you leave it at the key, or without the ampersand, you can type in the word bikes, and that also will work. So this is going to take the bikes position on all of them. So as I take this and I deploy, and I come back and I refresh, now what we're going to see is all of these are going to be the same number, 5785, because I forced it. I'm not letting it do the current member stuff anymore. I'm making it say bikes. So I'm going to refresh, and lo and behold, look, it's all bikes. Even the one that didn't even have anything in it, it came in and made it the same as bikes. All right? So that's what's happening here as far as that. So now what is our goal? Our goal was to get this number lined up the way this number is, right? So what is this number? Well, what this number is the all member. Okay, it's the all member of if you take all these together and you make it the all member, that will be the 1199. Okay, for the category. All right, so I'm gonna come over here. I'm gonna change this, and the all member here is called all products. So I'm just gonna type this one in. I think I can handle it. So I'm gonna say all products. And I'm going to then deploy again. I go up and it's deployed, so I go up to data and I refresh again. Now we're going to see 1199 in all these areas. As you see, okay? This is how you control through MDX. Now obviously the MDX is a language that's building that calculated member. And that's how you do it, okay? So now, if I take that logic, all right, now over here, we must have 883, that was probably from some other, there we go, 2007 was 883, and you see it's over here. Now I'm starting to look a lot like over here, right? So let me move the frozen down a little bit. Okay, now what I want the next step to do is to divide this area by this area, which will be then, which I'm going to call average customer sales. Okay, average customer sales. That sounds good, right? Okay, so I come back over here and I create a new calculated member. average, I'm going to call this frozen. No, this isn't frozen. Average customer sale. Okay, and I'm going to use the frozen customer count. So if I'm going to use it and have a dependency on it, I want my next value, this value, to be after this value because it needs to calculate that first. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is say I know the sales amount, right, which is, I want to take the current sales amount, whatever's sitting there in the sales amount, which is under internet sales. And oh, there's my frozen. It's showing up here. Internet sales amount. There we go. So I'm going to drag that on, and I want to divide that, right, by this new metric, which is the frozen customer count. That's it. Of course, you could do some if statements and that kind of thing to make sure this isn't equal to 0 before you do that, before you don't get any errors showing up. But for purposes of demonstration right now, we're just going to leave it the way it is. Okay, so there we go. Average customer sales. That's the one. Now that's ours. That's our. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and deploy. Go back over to Excel. Refresh. And now I have the demo average customer sale here, which I click on. Okay, so now as you see, it equals the same amount, which is exactly what we want. So now instead of the user have to go in and do this kind of thing, you can allow the cube to create those metrics for you and let it do the work, and let your BI people, your business users, worry about just pulling those items on to their spreadsheet. The components have no customer count associated with them, no internet sales amount, and the demo didn't have anything in it on the average customer sale, yet it is showing up when we pull in the frozen customer count. If I pull out the frozen customer count, it goes away. Well, that's interesting, and that's something we need to address and explain. So I'm going to add frozen customer count back in, and really this line should not show up. Okay. What we need to do, though, because of the way, the nature of the logic, it's still bringing in that number, and if there's a number on any of those lines, on any of those columns of the metrics, it's going to bring in the member name, as it does here. This is even more prevalent if we take out the category and bring in subcategory, and ouch, you really see it here, which is really not what your users need to see or want to see. Okay, it's just plain old wrong. Okay, so what we have to do is tidy up our calculated member a little bit over there, and what happens is that we're going to say we're going to go back over to our calculated member screen, and we're going to go into frozen. We're going to put a basic statement in there, an if statement, which I've already contrived. And what I want to say is if the customer count is 0, and an empty cell in the cube is also represented, on the measures, is represented as 0 also. If the count is 0, I'm going to bring back a null for this value, for frozen customer count. Null will make it empty. It will make the cell empty. If it's not 0, then I'm going to bring back the regular measure. So if I bring back an empty cell, that means all the cells in that row that we're seeing under components is empty. And then components will not show up. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. I'm adding this if statement here. If it equals 0, it's going to bring back null. Otherwise, it's going to bring back that tuple that we created earlier. And this is going to clean up and compress that data into a good natural form that we want our users to look at. Okay, so let me go ahead and deploy. And now we're in the subcategories, and we're going to go to data and refresh. And there it is. Now it's nice and clean. Okay, so that's how you get rid of those phantoms because of the nature of the empty cell. All right. Now, the last thing I'll just talk about is that the only thing we froze here basically is the product dimension. We didn't freeze. And let me be very clear. Let's bring this back to category because it's a little easier to see. We didn't freeze our date dimension. When our date dimension comes in, it's going to take the current member of whatever we bring in. So for example, in 2007, I could bring in month, okay, and drop it here, and we'll see filtering going on by month. So in this case, well, let me drop it the other direction, a little easier to see. So for accessories, you see it breaks out. We got 6259 for accessories, but our count is we have a breakout of all our counts. Okay, because we didn't isolate our counts for month. Okay, if we did and we put in the month as an all, then we would see a whole different lineup here. We wouldn't see the frozen counts being broken out. Okay, they would all say 88813, etc. Like these are doing here, right? There's more to this, and there's more intricacies that I could discuss, but I've gone way over time, and I think this will allow you to start using some of these techniques, go further with this. But at least hopefully I've given you a taste of the power here, and you learned some more about MDX and how it tuples are constructed. This concludes this video. Please come and see more of my videos at www.sqlcoop.com. Thank you.